Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be trying something a little different than usual. Usually I do time-lapse painting videos, but today I really wanted to start a tutorial on how to paint Xiangling from Genshin Impact from start to finish with oil paints. Before we get into today's video, I'd like to take a moment to draw your attention down into the description box where I've listed a link to a Dropbox file for the base drawing of Xiangling's project. I have also listed all of the products and tools and where to find them, keeping a budget-friendly attitude in mind. Today we're going to be talking about how to get you from a blank canvas to one that is prepped, primed, and ready to paint. To do this, we're going to start with a blank canvas. Now this is a Master's Touch Classic Collection 10x10 canvas. This is the one that I have linked down below because it is only $3.99 and it is very good quality for such a low price. This canvas comes triple primed, which means that we don't have to worry about getting our gesso out and sanding and priming and sanding and priming to get a smooth finish that's going to be nice for painting. Now these do have a little bit of texture, but that's not going to inhibit our painting for this project. In order to get our canvas from this to this, we're going to have to take a couple of steps. Now the first one includes getting our base drawing onto the canvas. To get our base drawing onto the canvas, we have a couple of options. I'm going to go over three of them. The first one being tracing. Now you would print this out traditionally on a piece of printer paper, scribble on the back of it with a piece of graphite or a pencil, and then with some pressure, when you flip it over onto your canvas, you would trace all of the lines onto your canvas. The second option would be to grid it out, where you would set a certain amount of rows and a certain amount of columns, and you would trace those squares one by one. They have videos on how to do this. It can get a little fidgety, I'm not going to lie to you. So that is why I'm going to suggest the third option, which I have recently started using, and it has made a world of difference for preparing my canvases. What this is called is a new app called Vinci Eye. Now the great thing about this is that it'll show you what your drawing is going to look like onto the canvas before you even start, because you can position it, you can center it, which is wonderful because I've drawn by hand so many times a canvas that has just, a centimeter off center, and then I have to start all over. So that takes the guesswork out of everything. What it does is it superimposes your base drawing onto your canvas using your camera, and then looking at your screen you're able to trace out all of the lines. You can even zoom in for the smaller details. It's really a wonderful app and something that I hope you consider if you're going to be thinking seriously about taking art as a career, or if you are an artist. It can be a great tool to have. Now that we have our base drawing onto the canvas, we need to seal it. Now a couple of things are going to happen if we do not seal it. The graphite is going to smudge into our paint, or it's going to move around on us when we touch the canvas, and that's going to create a huge mess that, trust me, you do not want. I've learned this the hard way. To work around this, we can use a product called Workable Fixative, and I use this one by Krylon. It is also linked below. But if you can't afford this, do not stress it. You can actually use just a couple of light coats of hairspray, and it'll also bond those particles of the graphite to the canvas. So that way when you rub your hand over it, you shouldn't get any smudges and nothing coming off on your fingers. Now that we have the base image on, and now that we know that the particles aren't going to blend in with our paint, we're going to still take one more step before we start painting. What that step is that we're going to take a very light coat of gesso This is the Liquitex gesso, and we're going to dry brush it over our canvas, over the drawing. I know this sounds crazy, but what you'll notice is that my lines on this prepped canvas aren't very dark, and we don't want dark lines. What's going to happen if we have dark lines is that how do I want to word this? Our oil paint is set to different opacities, which means some of the paint is going to be transparent and others are going to be opaque. Now, if we have very dark lines underneath the paint, those transparent paints are going to show those through our painting, and we don't want to see our base drawing through the finished painting. So if you do a very light coat of gesso or even white acrylic paint, you can wipe it off if you get too much on with a paper towel, but that is going to not only lock in our particles in case the fixative were to move or come off of the canvas, it is also going to tone down those lines so that way they're not going to have much of a chance of showing through to our final painting. Once you complete these steps, your canvas is ready to paint. Now, that doesn't mean that our prep work stops there, because we still have a very important aspect to keep looking at, and that is our palette. For the purpose of this video, I'm using the Master Touch line 12-piece set. Now, this is very inexpensive. When I purchased this last month, it was $5.99. So it's pretty much attainable for anybody in any kind of budget. You do not have to use this brand. I thought it would be nice to keep a budget in mind for such a small project. But I will also list down below the exact colors that we're using in this. Now, this set includes titanium white, lemon yellow, medium yellow, or yellow medium, yellow ochre, scarlet, crimson, ultramarine blue, phthalo green, plant green, burnt umber, and ivory black. Now, I don't believe we're going to be using a lot of the phthalo green and the plant green, but you never know when you're mixing colors. If you do need to counteract some reds, green is going to be an awesome option. As far as your palette is concerned, I am using this one, so that way while I'm painting, I can bring it in front of the camera and I can show you what I'm mixing as we go. But you don't have to use one of these, especially if you can't find one like this. Don't worry about it. You can use many other things. I've used paper plates, I've used old mirrors, which are great. I suggest old mirrors for anybody who's working on a budget and can't afford the gray glass palettes, which I finally have one, but I use mirrors for years. If you want, you could stay away from the paper and the plastics. I suggest going with glass only because it's going to make your paint last longer, where the oils aren't going to be absorbed into the plastic and they're not going to be absorbed into the paper if you're using a paper plate. But we're not going to be using all of the paint in the tube, so if you're not that concerned about, using too much of your paint and having it dry out, then to set up my palette, which I suggest you doing as well, you don't need to have these individual little wells. You can just go as the packaging goes with your titanium white down through your yellows to your crimson to your blues to your greens and to your brown, and then finally to your black. What this will do is it's already set up our colors in a gradient. So that's going to come in handy when we start mixing. But feel free to experiment. Do whatever you feel. This is just what I'm suggesting, as I've tried and failed and tried and failed. So this is how I'm going to set up mine. Feel free. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we need to talk about some of the products that we're going to be using in these videos. And the most important part is the brushes. Now, I've chosen this set of Nick Pro detail brushes. I I've been using them for about 7 or 8 paintings now, and they are wonderful for detail work. And a canvas this small, you want detail brushes because your details are going to be very tiny. Now, if you can't afford these, it's no problem. You can get nice detail brushes at stores like Walmart. I've used them. I still use them. I have them in my brush collection, and they'll work just fine. But the one thing we do want to talk about is having a good mop brush. Now, a mop brush is going to look like this. This one is a little big for the project that we're going to be doing because, again, we're going to be working on a smaller canvas, which means smaller details. We're going to want a slightly smaller mop brush than this. We're going to want one this size. Now, I've linked one of the Master's Touch brands down in the description box below. But what I found is that my favorite mop brush I wanted to share with you is actually an eyeshadow brush. I've cleaned it, made sure that it's good to use, but this size, if you can see, is the perfect size for this project. And it's just another instance of use what you have. If you have it, it's wonderful, and it doesn't break the bank. So I hope that helps. Now we're going to have to clean our brushes. So that's where the Gamblin Gamsol is going to come in handy. You don't need a lot of this stuff. That is why I've linked a bottle about this big in the description box below. This is a odorless paint thinner, and do not try to wash out your brushes every time with soap and water, because with oils you're gonna have a headache, and trust me, you don't want to do that. So let's just stick with any kind of odorless paint thinner to be able to clean out those brushes really well and save you a lot of headache. One tool that I didn't link below, but that I find that I use a lot, especially if I make mistakes, is Q-tips. I'm sure everybody's got some laying around. Now these are great to pick up oils if we put on too much and the color's not coming out the way that we want, or we make a mistake and we need to pick up that paint and get it off the canvas. Another product that we're going to be using, but not for a while, is this solvent-free Gamblin Medium. Now, you don't need a big tube like this. I like the Gamasol. A little bit goes a long way, so I've only included a link for a very small tube. This is going to help us with our glazing. When we glaze in some shadows and some fun lights into our painting, this is going to come in handy then when we need to thin out those paints to get just a veil of color over our other colors. Now that we've completed this, and we've talked about the steps to get your canvas ready for the project, I want to take a moment to tell you that if you have any problems, if you have any questions, come to me in the comments and I will get back to you as diligently as possible. That is what I'm here for. I've been looking forward to making tutorials since I started painting in 2017. I really feel that I have a lot to offer, and a lot of insight that has come through trial and error and a lot of failure. So if you would consider liking and subscribing, that would be awesome. You don't have to, but it would be great, and it would also let you know when the next video for this tutorial would be out. So even if you choose not to, I hope you have a wonderful day. And I genuinely appreciate you watching this video. Thank you very much.